You're listening to Arsenal Pass, a flesh and blood podcast for players by players. And all about strategy, leveling up, and the latest news in the world of Wraith. Welcome to Arsenal Pass.
Hello and welcome back to episode 165 of Arsenal Pass. Hayden Dow here with an unfortunately sickly Brendan Patrick, but he's a battler, he's a warrior, he's determined to at least be here for the start of the show. I want to say thank you and big ups to Brendan.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting. I've obviously in the course of Arsenal Pass existing, I've been sick in the past, but this is actually the first time I've missed a podcast, and I kind of am missing this one, but I missed a different one yesterday in 3 years. And that's how bad it is. So I actually have the flu. I went and got tested yesterday because I thought it might be COVID. Just got back from that big convention. Really wasn't feeling well. And yeah, it's just the flu. I got some steroids in me, so I'm gonna come back jacked and stronger than ever. That's how those things work, right? But I'm starting to feel better. Just some fevers. They're not fun.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure all of the Arsenal Pass community wishing you a speedy recovery. We'll be missing you for the, guest portion of the pod this week. But this week in Flesh and Blood, I guess you've been recovering. I don't know anything to talk about from your side. Did you catch any of the coverage while you were kind of resting up of the Battle Hardened? Or
I caught the top 8 breakdown, which is pretty interesting from the Battle Hardened. I also saw that Darkodius won back-to-back, I believe, on Enigma, so that was pretty impressive. And yeah, that's about the extent I caught. Other than that, I was legit bedridden. I was not having a good time.
Yeah, Battle Hardened over the weekend and Pro Quest Plus. We kind of got our first few events of Classic Constructed, and I talk about that in the main topic with our guest. Our guest is Mr. Matt Rogers this week, coming off the back of, I was going to say, a performance at Tokyo. He did put in a performance in Tokyo, but it was in the booth. So ask him about that as well as many other things. And we talk Classic Constructed and this limited meta as well. But yeah, interesting to see. I mean, there was all 3 of the new heroes represented in that Pro Quest Plus top 8 on the Sunday in the Battle Hardened Montreal. Good to see Canada getting some love. They need a calling. I'm going to shout that out. Where is the calling Toronto? Where is the calling? Actually, if I say the calling Vancouver, I feel like the East Coast boys would get a bit jealous, but Battle Hardened Montreal was this past weekend. So you guys got something on the East Coast. Give the West Coast some love. Well, this week in Flesh and Blood for me, Brendan, I've been doing a lot of testing, mostly CC. Haven't gotten too many drafts, but we have draft camp this weekend. So this format is actually really interesting. So I think the weekend we had Pro Quest Plus on the Sunday in Montreal, pretty sizable Battle Hardened Pro Quest Plus. There was a Pro Quest Plus in Dallas, as well. I don't know if you know this.
So there's DreamHack, DreamHack Dallas. Funny story about that is basically there was I don't know if I should say this. I didn't take advantage of it because I didn't do it.
I was about to say it.
There was a way to sneak into it. Basically, there was a promo code to get a free pass, and I think a lot of people got in via that because it circulated the group chat. But I was sick during DreamHack, so I was gonna go on Saturday and Sunday, but I started to not feel good, and I'm like, I don't know how I feel about this. And then Sunday I was dying, but yeah, the DreamHack tickets were like $50 a day. That's crazy.
That's steep.
Yeah, but DreamHack is a dope convention. I'm just so used to conventions at this point being free to enter. So when I saw the entry price, I was like, yeah, I don't know about that. And I was eyeing my Kano deck, and I was like, gotta go pick up my Kindles, but I didn't make it out.
Well, you say it was circulating in the group chats, but I think there was 13 people in this battle.
Maybe I should have
in the Pro Quest Plus, sorry.
Holy crap.
Yeah, and I think there might have been 2 of them as well, interestingly. So anyway, I think that might just be some unfortunate. I mean, I had no clue that there was anything happening in DreamHack for Flesh and Blood, and it sounds like maybe a lot of people did as well, unfortunately.
Yeah, so. I kind of same here. So the only reason I knew is because DreamHack comes here every single year, and usually I'll go for, I remember in the past I've gone for weird Magic drafts, like Magic Chaos drafts. Those can be fun sometimes, right? I don't remember paying so much to get in. I remember I saw the ticket price. I was like, okay, I won't go. But I saw the Fab event actually listed. But there was also other card game events that weren't even listed. And I didn't even notice it until the week after when I saw them on Twitter. People were like, I won the X event in Lorcana.
Yeah,
I'm like,
at DreamHack.
What? What are they talking about?
Yeah, I wish there was a bit more focus on that. And then across the pond, as you guys like to say, or in the UK, there was also a ProQuest Plus, won by Zen. So Zen took out a couple of ProQuest Plus over the weekend, plus also then Enigma. So both going to new heroes, and across the top 8, seeing those new heroes. So very interesting. Kind of reflects some of my testing as well, that these heroes are powerful. Part of the Mistveil definitely, I think if we took a step back in power level, Brendan, over the last couple of sets, part of the Mistveil is not one of them, I would say. I think we're starting to see a little ramp up again in power level.
I mean, Brian basically said that verbatim as well on the podcast. It was like, we actually did, he said they weren't afraid, but they did play it a bit safe. And now they are comfortable to not play it as safe, which is good. I think that new sets should impact the metagame. It doesn't have to be 3 for 3, but should definitely be more than 0 for 3. And so I'm happy.
What do you mean?
I'm happy to see it.
Bright Lights did, right?
Yeah, Bright Lights. Yeah. We had a string.
And James said as well, right?
Yeah.
Well, James talked about it as well. This kind of this ebb and flow of the power level of Flesh and Blood. He talked about that rather than being a steep.
I don't know if you were there when he first mentioned that. That was actually at Pro Tour Baltimore on the keynote speech.
Yeah.
And I was
was it? No, I think it was earlier than that because I heard it.
He did it at the keynote speech. I remember I was standing next to Matt Fox, and Matt was like, does that mean that this set is the shit set or the next set? He was just like, it was just a weird way of putting it. It's like, someone who's selling product is like, some are going to kind of suck. The other ones are going to be great. And it's like, wait, what? Which one is the good one? Which one's the bad one here?
I think it's about I think when I heard it explained, it was also at the long-term impact of cards as well. And while they might not have impact, most now I think they are focusing on having impact on release, but not every card in the set might have that impact. So yeah, interesting. So Living Legend points for Zen, Living Legend points for Enigma. There's a bunch of new articles up on FabTCG. If you're looking for kind of some insight into these new heroes, how to build them, how to play them, how to hit them in limited, we're going to cover that today. But you can also go check out these great articles that are up there. I mean, LSS are pumping out a ton of great content between that and their dev downloads, which are their kind of almost like podcasts, basically, video podcast forms. There's a Brian and James one talking about the design of Part of the Mistveil. There is post the premiere. There's one as well talking about the kind of format and limited and things like that. So yeah, check them out.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you would call it anything except a podcast. I think it definitely is like a LSS. Sort of sponsored and created podcast. And I think it's cool. It's very well done. It's a professional studio. And obviously Brian has a lot of experience when it comes to podcasting.
Do you know, for some reason, when I first saw them do the video, the studio setup reminded me of Between Two Ferns. I don't know why. If you've ever seen Between Two Ferns.
No.
Zach Galifianakis,
I think I have actually. I think I have. But maybe only like a short. I don't think I've actually seen like a full
Okay. Yeah. It's pretty funny.
Episode.
All right, Brendan. I think we're ready to transition to.
Well, let me ask you real quick. I've seen a lot of talk on Zen. Seems like Zen is the thing that people are complaining about nowadays.
Not Enigma anymore. Last week was Enigma.
Last week was Enigma, but Enigma seems to be not so good anymore. I mean, obviously Darkodius took down back to back, but seems like Zen Enigma's is something that people are pretty. I don't know. They're a bit excited about on Twitter, talking about. Maybe it's a little unfun. Maybe it's a little powerful. What are your thoughts on Zen? We talked about this on the Patreon pod a bit, but
yeah, it's powerful. It's definitely powerful. I think it's also reasonably straightforward as well. I think as a hero, which I think is nice in terms of it's a little bit more complicated than some of the other ninjas we've seen previously to pilot. I think because you have a bit more. Whereas something like Katsu, right? You're kind of like coming in with like Kadachi lines and Claire combo lines. With this, your lines can be a little bit different, and you're trying to maximize damage. So you're kind of it's not really about the combo line specifically. It's about actually just how you sequence plays and how you use your headpiece, how you utilize your equipment, things like that. But the deck is full of damage, I would say. So, but it's also susceptible to on-hit effects, I think. So yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. It definitely is powerful, but I think that's fine. I think we've talked about this before. I think it's fine to have powerful semi-linear to linear decks available in formats.
So the top 8 of the Battle Harden in Montreal had a lot of different heroes represented in the top 8.
It was a ProQuest Plus. The Battle Harden was limited.
Okay, so ProQuest Plus had a lot of different heroes represented in the top 8. Does the diversity that showed up in that top 8 represent your internal testing, or do you think that the meta is a bit more narrow than may have been on display there?
What was the top 8? So it was no KOs in the top 8.
No KOs, yeah. I mean, there was like a Victor Gold Mono in there.
Yeah. No Enigma, Zen. Was there a Kano in that top 8?
Let me pull it up. I'm pulling up Man Stance right now. Hopefully it's not too far behind, but Okay.
Yeah,
Top
so
8 for Start of Montreal looks like Katsu, New, Enigma, Prism, Katsu, New, Kano, Victor Goldmane.
So no Zen.
No Zen.
Okay, so there's no Zen in that top 8, but it won the other 2 ProQuest Plus. Yeah, I think the Katsus did really well in that event. I think 2 of them are at 6-0 or something like that, or 5-1, 6-0 towards the end of the Swiss. I think it was 7 rounds of Swiss. So I think the Ninjas are taking advantage of probably the Enigmas and the Prisms of the world. Like Illusionist has been popular, and I think Illusionist will continue to be popular. You've got 2 options now. I think within the Illusionist, I think the diversity is kind of what we're seeing in testing. I think there's like 5 to 7 decks that are like playable. Actually, it's a question for Matt as well. Like, how many of the decks do you think is playable? But yeah, and then I think there's like a where I thought there was maybe a top 2 or top 3. I think there's more of like a top 5, which is interesting. I think that's good. The game rather than just maybe K or Azalea being on top. I think Enigma and Zen are really both challenging in there, and I honestly think even Prism's challenging in there. So
yeah, I can also give you the metagame break. I mean, I'm sure you and Matt were going to get into this, but just quickly, the metagame breakdown for the top 4 most played deck. We can go top 5 is New.
Yeah, go for it.
New at 12, KO at 9, Zen at 8. So and Zen also at a 0% conversion to top 8 as well as KO. 7 Leviah, 7 Kano, 7 Prism, 7 Victor, 6 Enigma, and then of course we get into the cesspool, the bottom feeders. We got 5 Bolton. But very interesting to see nine KO and 8 Zen not convert at all, because those are 2 very powerful decks. They have strong narratives behind them, to say the least.
Yeah, that is interesting. I mean it's week 1.
Yeah,
so it's hard to read too much into it other than maybe the playability data and then what kind of stands on top. So yeah, we'll see.
Mm-hmm. All right. Yeah. I'm sorry, did I interrupt you? Were you saying something? I felt like
No, that's exactly the point.
Okay. Let's bring in Mr. Matt Rogers. Matt Rogers. Most people listening to this podcast know who he is, but someone I've wanted to have on for a long time. And I'm a big fan of Matt Rogers for more than just Flesh and Blood reasons. I do think that Matt Rogers is the biggest winner in Flesh and Blood, and by that I mean not only his very impressive career in the game, but also, the man was able to create a company in what I believe is probably one of the most monopolistic industries to ever exist, which is card grading, which is absolutely crazy. An industry that is predicated off of reputation, consumer trust, and is monopolized by 2, 3 companies legitimately. There's other card grading companies, but nobody gives a fuck if you get graded by them, because it doesn't matter. It's like, it's so fascinating to me how Matt came in, disrupted that industry, and is now one of the biggest card graders in the world. So, yeah, I'm bummed I'm going to miss out on this one, but I'll show you some questions to ask him because I'm fascinated.
We got them. Don't worry. All right, and joining me on the pod is Mr. Matt Rogers, almost doing like a little fill-in job for Brennan Patrick today with his illness. I want to say a big thank you, Matt, for coming on the pod. Finally, great to finally have you on, and how are you?
Yeah, I'm good, man. Thanks so much for asking me to be on. I'm happy to be here, and I'm good. Enjoying Fab a lot these days.
That's good to hear. And actually, I want to start with something, because people probably know who you are if they don't, Matt Rogers. But what people may not know is I want to ask you just quickly about your accolades. I know you're a humble man, but your accolades in Flesh and Blood as well. You've got more top 8s than maybe people think. So how many calling top 8s do you have, Mr. Matt Rogers?
I'm actually not sure. I know it's more than 10, but I don't know the exact number. There was a spreadsheet at some point that had like all of the calling top 8s, and I think I might have been on at the very top of it. So I know I'm somewhere up there.
You're definitely at the top of it. You actually recently have been doing a bit of coverage though as well. I want to ask about that first. Just kind of, Tokyo, you stepped into the booth on the Sunday and you did coverage. How are you finding kind of the split between doing, the play and then also doing coverage? How did you find that?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's only really been that one event for me lately. I used to do a lot more coverage in the early Pro Tours and stuff. I would jump in the booth the next day or for the top 8s or whatever, and I really enjoyed it then. But I wasn't prepared to commit to doing coverage overplaying. So, it was sort of like, if I don't do well or if there's a top 8 or whatever, then I'll jump into the booth. And that's as much as I was really prepared to commit to. I did a US Nats coverage thing as well. And I had a lot of fun, but I really enjoyed playing. I really enjoyed testing and, being competitive and everything like that. So, whereas, a few weeks ago, I got pulled back into the booth for not doing so well day one, and them having a bit of a need day two, and I absolutely loved today and realized that, hey, like nowadays when I get a lot less time for testing and it's kind of hard to keep up with these kids that play 40 hours a week or whatever, then like maybe casting is for me, and maybe that's something that I want to look at a little bit more.
Yeah, I think they call that the pulling an LSV, getting in the booth on day 2. It's awesome. And I think, I watched back actually some of Tokyo and heard, and I thought, you did an amazing job and providing that kind of analytical insight, I think, into, what's happening in higher level players' heads, I think is kind of invaluable and is, and not to say, we have an amazing range of casters, I think, and they are very professional. And I think, when you get someone in there who's fresh off an event, though, it's a bit of a different perspective, I think, especially with a brand new set like that as well. So, I want to ask you about. No, you go, Matt. I feel like you've got something else to say. I feel like you because you enjoyed yourself so much. I could see the smile on your face when I saw you on Sunday. You're having a great time.
Honestly, it's actually just a ton of fun in the booth. Getting to just sit there and talk about everything that's on my mind when I'm watching a cast anyway. Like if I'm watching a battle hardened or a call-in or something, I'm always like, thinking about all these things and talking to myself and all the rest of it. And getting in a booth is literally just doing that out loud, and it was a ton of fun and something I'd like to do a little bit more of. And I think that's something I've always been a little bit critical of with certain casts as well, as like not having people that talk through the lines and talk through draft picks and decisions and all of these other points. I always get frustrated watching casts being like, oh, why can't I want to get into this player's head. I want to be able to think about what they're thinking about. So it's really cool to be put in this position where you get to be the change you want to see, I guess.
Yeah, massively agree. We're going to talk about Limited, apart from Server Limited. We're going to be talking about Classic Construct a little bit, but first of all, something that me and Brendan wanted to do with bringing you on the pod as well, and obviously know Brendan today, so I'm going to do my best Brendan interview impersonation just for a short while, is while people might know you as Matt Rogers the player, some people also know you as Matt Rogers the businessman, who especially if you're in New Zealand, you probably know what Matt's done in the TCG community from a community and business standpoint with the stores he's opened, but also the one thing I do want to talk to you about is PCG. And I think what Brendan really wants to know, so I'm going to try and pass on Brendan's questions here, is just how did PCG come about, and how did you realize that there was an opportunity for what is a pretty locked up industry to be able to try and break into that, especially with an APAC?
Yeah. I mean, what I've always really enjoyed doing in business is kind of looking at areas that are underserved, that have gotten a little bit old school and haven't kind of been refreshed or modernized or kept up to date, and then coming in there and giving kind of a new fresh look at it. And I think with PCG and grading in particular, it was very much the case. Sort of going into the pre-COVID era, we'd kind of got into this point over 15 plus years where a couple of quite dominant grading companies had world market share, and we're putting out the same product, same label, same case, very little innovation, and their service times were multiple months, 4-6 months or whatever, to get cards graded. So the service was terrible. The product was unrefreshed, I guess, and it really seemed like there was a good opportunity in the market. I try to never let being from a small country like New Zealand, kind of stop me or get in the way there. So yeah, basically, I just kind of went for it and gave it a go, and the community really got behind us from multiple games and multiple avenues, and it's been a lot of fun and a lot of success.
Yeah. It's an industry though that's built on reputation though, right? And so I guess how did you break into an industry that is so on reputation? It is so global, even though, like you say, don't let it stop you being from a small country, but ultimately being from a small country down the bottom of the world.
Yeah, I think that's been the hardest thing. Is the constant question is, okay, well, like this grading company, what reputation is there to go off, right? Like how can we trust? And I think we've done quite well with partnering with very trustworthy businesses and people throughout the different regions, and I think that's kind of been a way for us to kind of leapfrog and get over those initial stepping stones. And then we've just done the right thing, right? Like we haven't given the community much reason to distrust us yet. Like touch wood, but yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome to hear. I want to, what is the status of PCG right now, Premier Card Grading? Like, how many offices do you now have? I think people in those regions might know that you offer that service, but totality is the business is big now, right? Like, how many offices and where do you offer services?
Yeah, so we've got New Zealand, Australia, Malaysia, UK, Germany, and USA at the moment. So 6 offices. And we're currently working on a 7th in Japan at the moment, which is kind of our big focus this year, to open the Japan office. But yeah, we've tried to spread across the regions that are underserved and the regions that are, important, obviously. And so the big ones kind of on my bucket list from here on out is Japan, Canada, and potentially South America.
Wow, awesome. What do you? I mean, it's being in retail myself. I know it's you've been in that game a long time. You're in service industry to a degree now, but also I guess it's partially retail product in a way. What are some of the challenges you're kind of seeing for PCG over the next 6 to 12 months? I mean, it's not an easy environment out there at the moment.
Yeah, I think right now a lot of businesses are struggling, and if you're not. I think you're in a very privileged position if you're not struggling as a business right now. You've got something really special, and yeah, certainly luxury things like a grading service is obviously a luxury service, so it is one that should struggle in this environment. It's not yet, which is amazing, but we have to kind of humble ourselves and be very prepared that the market is not in a great place, and things could start slipping quickly. So at the moment, it's just for us personally, it's about having a lot of kind of backup plans and a lot of ways to weather a 2 or 3 year downturn if we need it, and then not kind of taking the stuff that's going well for granted.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's okay if you have a crystal ball right now. Like, at what point do things look to be in a better position economically, macro, micro, all these things? It's tough to know, right? What about, you were talking before? Interestingly, I think it's super interesting because you're talking about coming to an industry that is a bit stagnant. Hadn't really shaken it up in a long time. What is PCG's point of differentiation? Do you sort of feel from your big competitors out there? What are you guys owning?
Oh, I think we have the best looking slab in the world, and I think that speaks kind of volumes there. I think that's one of the most important things, right? Like we have, as people grade their cards mostly for look and display, and to preserve things that are special to them or things that are valuable. So when when we're putting out a product that we believe is, significantly better looking and a better display and a nicer thing to kind of preserve your important collectibles with, then that's kind of the most important thing. And then I think just our service and like focus on TCGs. So we're a bit more niche focused. Where a lot of these grading companies, they do a huge range of sports, and some do comics and coins and all of this sort of stuff. We do a bit of that, and we are rolling into sports and stuff, but we're a very focused, primarily TCG grader. So we give that niche or that community something that's very focused on them, and it allows us to be quite dynamic and changing, and respond to their specific feedback.
Yeah, that's great. I've got to ask as well, now you talked about displaying and the look of cards, of course, but also, in Flesh and Blood, because of the equipment, playing with cards to a little bit of degree, and you've known as someone who's old slab Matt has played with some slabs before. Do you reckon, first of all, marketing tactic ? And do you reckon you pioneered that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Marketing tactic. It was a full-on shill. I tried to pioneer that, and honestly, it's been hard. Like, I first played with big clunky slabs back in Pro Tour Leo, I think it was, and it was horrible. Like, and I was like, yeah, this is ridiculous. I can't believe I'm doing this. I must just look so silly on camera. And then worked on the Fab Slab, brought that out, and that was a huge improvement, and I think a really cool thing. But I still haven't been quite happy playing with them, to be honest. I'm just going to be completely honest with you. I think that playing with the Fab Slabs aren't the perfect solution yet, and so that's why I've actually been in development, and we're likely about a month or two away from rolling it out as the Fab Slab 2.0. So I've produced a new Fab Slab, which is much thinner and doesn't use a label anymore. So it allows it to be even thinner again, because you don't have to have a placement for a label. And it uses an NFC sticker that just goes on the back of the card, on the back of the sleeve of the card inside the slab, and then you can scan that with your phone. And so that's basically allows the Fab Slab to be about half the thickness, and you can fit plenty in a deck box along with your cards, and I think it really solves the problem, and it allows them to basically be a mini snap.
Cool, exciting, awesome. Well, there you go. Some info for people looking at maybe those who already use the Fab Slab, or maybe do want to get stuff graded, but we're a little bit worried about playing with it. You've got another option potentially coming very soon.
Yeah. So no, I'm pretty excited about this next innovation on that. I think it's going to get it to a point where you can just throw 10 slabs in a reasonably bigger deck box. It doesn't have to be this massive like suitcase thing or anything like that now. You can just kind of pop them out and protect all of your expensive, valuable equipment and heroes and whatnot, and make it pretty easy, really.
Yeah, not everyone's a degenerate who just plays with first edition cold foils and a single sleeve, but that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
Last question I want to ask in terms of PCG before we get on to some limited and constructed chat is around the partnership with LSS and what that's kind of meant to the growth of PCG, and also what does that look like and how important has it been for you guys?
Yeah, I think, a huge thank you to James and LSS. That partnership has been very important. And I think for both sides as well. But yeah, I think it is the first time when a TCG publisher had ever partnered with a grading company. And a couple of others have done it since. Sorcery has partnered with us, and I think have partnered with another grading company as well, and a couple of others here and there. But that was kind of the first time where people were like, "Oh wow, this is this is a thing," I guess. But yeah, for us, it gave us a lot of credibility right off the bat. It was James and LSS saying that we believe in this company. We believe that Matt is credible and the people behind this, and we're going to tie our name and our credibility to that. And I think what it allowed us to basically be this new grading company out of the corner of the world in New Zealand, but come out with a bit of the trust of the community that LSS had already built up. So they were able to share that trust with us. And that's just been instrumental to everything. And I think the partnership has really allowed us, has really given a little bit more trust and credibility in the cards and in the process of perfecting the cards, the card quality for LSS as well. So, I mean, PCG have been constantly reviewing printing of new sets, of new promos, of everything, and going through things and giving LSS reports and feedback and suggestions and stuff, which they're feeding back to Cardamundo. And I think together we've managed to massively improve the quality of cards. Which has been a really, really fun and rewarding experience, and something that's been amazing for the community and for LSS as well. In this day and age, we're now getting, the very first sets of Flesh and Blood. It was quite difficult to get 9.5s, right? In Mistveil, we're seeing 10s pop up constantly, and the same thing with the gold foils. We're seeing 10s, the Pro Tour cards. We're seeing, pristine 10s, and Pro Tour winners cards and stuff. And the amount that we've gone through, and where we've come from those cards specifically, and a lot of the gold foils and stuff is really meaningful. I think the improvement has been massive. So I think there's been a lot of benefit to both LSS, obviously a lot to ourselves, and a lot to the community as well.
Yeah, you talked about just then, but the part of Mistveil, just the amount of the volume of firstly like 9.5s and like 10s that I'm seeing out there in terms of people posting them up on marketplaces and things like that. Like it's amazing, right? And I think it's the testament to that quality. I didn't know that. That's really interesting that you guys have worked so closely and been able to have a hand in improving that, because I think opening some packs, and also even that World Premiere, right? Like opening those packs. I think going into a market like Japan as well, that's so important as well. And I think that's, kind of nails that. So, all right.
Yeah. I guess to give you a bit of an idea, a submission that we had just a few days ago off somebody that opened a bunch of products and submitted all of their Marvels, a 47 card submission, had 15 10s in it. So you're talking more than 25%. Whereas, wind back a year and it was like less than 5, well, way less than 5%. It was probably 1 or 2% maybe. And then, 9.5s weren't even, or maybe were just 25%. So now to get 25% 10s and, 50% 9.5s and the other 25% 9s is just is such a huge improvement.
Yeah, awesome to see. All right, Matt. Let's talk a little bit about. Let's start with limited. I was going to start with constructed, but let's start with limited, because we're both at World Premiere Tokyo. I know you've been playing a little bit of limited, so just right off the bat, first question, the big question: is it a good limited format?
Yeah, I think hands down, hand on heart, it is a fantastic limited format. I think they've done really well. I really enjoy, kind of Illusionist with the aggressive Zen and the mid-range Nu. I think it all kind of ties in quite well, and I think that I think they've done some amazing changes, which I'm sure we're gonna talk about.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we can just get straight into it then. 30 cards, how does it feel? Do you think it works, and is it a long-term thing?
The 30 card deck?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best change I've seen. I think it works really well. I think that on games that do go close to fatigue, they can sort of go either way, and it can make some really interesting and important decision points. We don't really get games where you fully fatigue the opponent with still having 15 cards in your deck or anything like that, like we have had in previous formats. Like these are, if it goes to fatigue, it's down to the wire both sides. And for the most part, it's not. I mean, I've had very, very few games go to actual fatigue. It comes right down to it and really close, and usually like kind of the life battle wins out at the end. But yeah, I think 30 cards has been a fantastic change for that, and then it's also been a fantastic change for the drafting process. The fact that I know that every draft I've got a few flex slots, I've got a few, like even if I'm in a class early, I'm not going to play every card I draft. So if I'm in a class super early and I don't have to give up any picks to be in that class, then I know I have some hate room throughout the draft. So if I'm illusionist, I know I can take a few pick the pieces out of the draft and kind of increase my win percentage there. Likewise for everything else. But then it also means that if I am a class and I'm in the wrong thing to be in my seat, unlike a lot of previous draft formats, if I figure that out at pick 5, I can still switch. It doesn't matter that I give up 3 or 4 picks or whatever, because I'm going to have enough for that as long as I end up in my right seat.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things for me has been what I found in previous sets is when you got up to 32, 33, 34, some cases even 35, 36 cards in your deck, the reason that fatigue became so prevalent is often if you weren't in the right seat or you weren't committed early, not only would your opponent have six more cards than you, they had 6 more quality cards than you did, and that actually can sometimes be worth more, right? Sometimes it almost felt like your opponent had 40 cards in the deck and you had 30, just based on the pure quality of your cards, especially if you had to block a turn out or something. And you don't get that with part of the Mistveil, which I think is massive. And you talked about the kind of, the hate drafting versus the kind of the openness, the ability to switch, which maybe wasn't there previously. I massively agree. And I got that on even my second draft with part of the Mistveil, Battle Hardened top 8. I was in Zen until pick 7, and then Enigma was like wide open, ended up moving into like the 1 of 2 Enigma seat. And then, still being able to have a 30 card playable deck with equipment was just, kind of a bit of a difference to previous sets I think we've had before. So yeah, my experience so far of this limited format from a quality standpoint, the actual draft standpoint, has been great.
Yeah, I think they've really hit it home in more ways than just that as well. I think the fact that like your blues matter so much now, like your blues are just really good. I think that's huge for a limited format. That there's so little chaff, and because there's so many blues, like there's just such a massive amount of the cards are playable. You don't have these yellow bananas at the end of the picks that are never going to make your cut. Obviously, there's still a couple of those here and there, but it's not like you don't get down to the last 5 cards in the pack and your next like 4 picks are all just chaff that you really don't want to play.
Yeah, I know you've been a fan of a few different draft formats. You famously a big fan of Monarch draft, which I don't know, man. But I need to ask you, what's your least favorite draft format, and why is it Bright Lights?
But I'm such a mechanologist stan. I can't hate on Bright Lights, right? But yes, Bright Lights is my least favorite draft format. I 100% agree with you. I think there's no real innovation going on. There's no real kind of way to do. Every game plays out the same for the most part, and it's just all this silly kind of build up while blocking and trying to not take too much damage, and then overwhelming them with value. It gets very boring very quickly. Whereas this draft format and heavy hitters as well, what they've managed to do quite well the last couple of draft formats is keep the game very exciting and very interesting. You can play 100 games and not play that many similar ones. I think things do go quite differently a lot of the time. Especially with Enigma in the format and the way that deck kind of changes the dynamic of the game as well.
Yeah, I haven't done a lot of drafts yet. We've got draft camp this weekend, which I'm looking forward to. But already the kind of the spread of games I've had has been very varied. Like I think immediately when I got to about 10 drafts and bright lights, I was like, oh, please, why do I have to draft this at Worlds? Like that's actually how I felt. And you're talking about bananas before, you get to the last 5 picks and you're like, oh, it's just, yellows galore. It's so different. I think if heavy hitters was a reset for the limited format, then I think that Part the Mistveil is actually quite a big journey and improvement in terms of both design and also the experience of the limited experience, I think.
Yeah, I mean, personally for me with Bright Lights, I just gave up. I just didn't put the effort in. Like I probably played only about 10 or so drafts that format. I just wasn't enjoying it. I couldn't get into it. And so I just didn't do it. Whereas now for Mistveil, I've already played more drafts than that in the first week. So I guess that goes to say, and I'm really keen to do more.
That's why me and you are at the bottom tables in Barcelona, right?
Yeah, exactly. we'll blame it on LSS and we'll blame it on their draft format, I think.
Yeah, that was definitely it. Yeah. What about balance of heroes and the classes? How do you feel about the balance of heroes and classes? You said that, do you think they're all pretty balanced? And what do you think a pod of 8 probably will end up looking like in most pods, split-wise?
Yeah, well, I think it is really balanced, and I think the 3 heroes are pretty close in power level. So it kind of depends on what style of deck you get and how you like to play the limited format, I guess, as to where your preferences might lie. But in terms of raw power level, I don't think there's any like power preference. And so I guess that also comes back to like how you think the draft pods are going to end up. I have no idea which deck should be the 2 of. You know what I mean? Like, I think most pods will be the 3-3-2 split, and the 2 could go either way. Whereas in heavy hitters, it was like the 2 was likely to be Guardian, right? In this set, I think it's they've done a little bit better in that balancing over the 3. That there's no likely class for the 2 to be.
Yeah, I think I'm okay with there to be some kind of leaning towards that too, to kind of signpost a little bit for players. And I think that, like you say, heavy hitters, that was Guardian. My view so far in this format and part of the Mistveil is that I think the 2 is going to land up being new a lot of the time once people develop into the draft format. I think Zen and Enigma are on similar power levels and maybe just card quality wise can get away with some slightly lower quality cards than new can. That's been my experience so far anyway.
Yeah, I guess I tend to agree. I think Enigma can be quite a train wreck though. You can get a real train wreck Enigma draft. Whereas I feel like Enigma's got like kind of one of the highest ceilings and one of the lowest floors. If that makes more sense. So it's whether people will just stick to something like new that like is for the most part just always going to be solid. Your math is always decent and you're always you can block and stuff, and if they don't do anything, you've got 2 weapons there, so you can kind of always utilize your resources. So it's a very solid deck. So it's whether people will take the very solid choice or whether they'll kind of gamble a little bit more with Enigma or Zen or whatever and try to hit the higher ceilings.
Yeah. I think it makes sense. I think Enigma to me has been the hardest to draft so far, just from a putting it together standpoint and making sure that you've got the right pieces. There's a lot of strategies, I think, as well with Enigma. The game states can, like you were kind of alluding to earlier, be very dynamic. The games don't all go the same way. So having the right tools, but also knowing what to do with those tools can be quite tough, I think, honestly.
Yeah, I think it becomes pretty clear after a few reps, though. I think a lot of people will look at Enigma and be like, oh, this isn't the type of flesh and blood I like to play. I'm not an illusionist player. I want to veer away from that. But honestly, like I'm not a big fan of illusionist myself. But if you I feel like if you get into it and you do it a few times, it starts to click very quickly. The way that the deck should play out, and I think it isn't something that you should avoid. I think if you're going to be drafting this format, and you're going to be drafting at nationals, do a few Enigma drafts. I think you'll realize very quickly after like literally probably 2 drafts how the hero plays out and how the different game plans can come about.
Yeah, Dromire is not from Uprising Days, which could be a little bit more of a stickier kind of hero to draft, I think. I want to hear about some of the maybe emerging strategies you've been seeing in your drafts or that you've been kind of playing around with, trying out. Maybe if you just want to, I don't know, shout out a couple, but be it Nu, be it Zen, be it Enigma, any things that you've been finding, any maybe tips or tricks for people?
Yeah, just the different like blue decks, I guess. Like I've 3-0 drafts with like 3 reds in my entire deck. Like it's literally gotten that crazy with some of the strategies. So yeah, it's been really interesting. A lot of these blue cards that get buffs if you've played other blue cards, or get buffs if you've transcended. I've found a lot of really good strategies, I guess, in sort of utilizing blues. You realize you can get pretty insane turn cycles with some of the transcend cards, with blues specifically, Path Well Traveled. Yeah, it can be pretty crazy when you play out a hand of 4 blues and you've done 16 points. And it's like you've reached a higher level than what most 3 red and a blue hands can do. So I think what's been most interesting to me is some of these heavy blue decks that play 20 plus blues, having a strategy where your blues make your other blues better.
Yeah, synergy turns your blues into reds in a lot of game states, and I think that's like a biggest kind of piece of advice I give people is learn early on and as quickly as possible like what blues pair well with others and what your deck can look like building around blues, because like you said, 16 damage off 4 blues, that's a blue and a 3 red hand in some of the best decks, right? So you're saying you're winning drafts with 2 or 3 reds. Yeah, you could have 5 reds in your deck and 20 great blues that all synergize really well together, 5 yellow cards, whatever, and have a really, really powerful deck. So decks look different to how they have in other formats, and I think that's really important to understand as quickly as possible to make sure you can start to actually get valuable information out of your drafts as opposed to maybe taking 10 or 12 drafts to learn that.
Yeah, and I think there's been some other pretty interesting strategies that I found as well. Like there is, I've been toying around with like a new deck with almost all block 3s, and trying to somewhat fatigue my opponent, and utilize the ability more to mill them than to try to play their blues. Like if they side out their good blues, to kind of get around my hero ability and play worse blues, then I can just block a little bit more and I don't have to worry about them having a high damage output in the late game. So then I can utilize my new ability just to mill them a little bit more, and kind of punish them for siding out cards that would be good against them.
Yeah. I did try something similar actually. Where would you rank the set? That's what I want to know. I want to end the limited portion on this. In totality of the draft formats, where are you ranking Part of the Mistveil right now?
I mean, I'm literally one weekend and I'm a little bit of a hype beast. So I'm gonna say rank 1, but I think I'm just kind of on a high at the moment and really enjoying it. So maybe I'll find some flaws in the draft format, or maybe whenever everybody sort of works it out, it'll get a little bit more mundane or whatever. But right now, this draft format is a ton of fun, and it's my favorite draft format thus far in Flesh and Blood.
There you go, Matt Rogers, seal of approval. I'm not sure I lie right now, but I do think if I compare it to something like Uprising, which I actually really liked Uprising, I think this fixes a lot of the issues that Uprising had to make it a more playable set, but with some really similar mechanics and themes. And I think that's actually one of my shout outs to LSS is they recognized, I think, the issues with Uprising. They obviously got the feedback on it. They took their time, went away for 2 years almost, and came back with a set that kind of reminiscent of it a little bit, but honestly, an upgrade and a fix to a lot of the problems that we had.
Yeah, I literally couldn't agree more. I think my biggest thing with Uprising is like these yellow cards are garbage. There are not enough blues in this. And literally the set is the opposite of that. So yeah, they've done it perfectly well.
Get a tick. All right, let's move on to Classic Constructed. I know you've been spending a lot of your time on Limited so far, so we won't spend too long on Classic Constructed, but at the top of the show, me and Brendan briefly talked about the results from last weekend. There was a couple of ProQuest Plus won by Zen and Enigma, and the top 8 diversity was quite wide, but also representing all 3 new heroes across those top 8s. Knew the only one not to grab a win. I want to ask you, Matt, what's your first take on Classic Constructed, and how impactful was part of the Mistveil?
So first take of CC is that the format has changed quite considerably. I think there is a bit less blocking in Fab now. The format has taken away, has gone away where you get a lot less value out of blocking, and you get a lot more value out of forcing your opponent to block. So that I think the format is playing a lot more disruption and a lot more ways to punish the decks that don't want to block, and then a lot more decks that just try to not block at all. The new set has been hugely impactful. I believe the 3 new heroes are just straight tier 1. Probably 3 out of the top 5 decks. And I think that would be by design, right? If I was LSS and I was launching into Japan and doing, this big new set, the worst possible thing I could do is print a set where only one of the heroes actually sees top level play, and people aren't needing to buy an open product or whatever. So it makes sense for them to power creep a little bit this set, and make sure that all of the heroes they print are kind of in the running there, and I think that they've achieved that.
I think I'm there on Enigma and Zen from the past sort of week of testing. I'm maybe not quite there on New at the moment, in terms of maybe I've just not seen the list that people are finding success with. I found it a bit more, and actually it's interesting. You talk about the sort of gameplay of almost like this 2 axes of forcing your opponents to interact, and then being the deck that's trying to not interact almost, and just raw power level, right? Whether you're trying to interact from forcing them to have to just lay their cards on the table because of pure damage, or is it because of disruption? I think that's kind of, like you said, the 2 elements right now. And New, I think, is obviously in the camp of force your opponent to put the cards on the table because you're presenting disruptive effects. But I haven't quite seen maybe the power level as something like maybe Azalea does that in a way. I don't know. What's your thoughts on KO and Azalea? Because they were probably the top 2 decks coming into part of Mistveil.
Yeah, I think KO lost a lot. Just because Zen is kind of doing the same sort of thing. Like it has this consistent aggressive damage output and then these explosive turns, which is exactly what KO did with its, sort of consistent attacks and explosive blood rush turns, except for Zen can actually block, whereas KO plays a bunch of cards that can't. So I almost feel like initial testing almost feels like Zen is just a bit of a KO upgrade. And so while that deck's really good, I don't see a reason to play it anymore. I played KO quite a lot last format, but this format I'm looking at, I look at Zen and I'm like, what would be the reason to play KO over this deck? I can't really find it. So I guess that's kind of the main thing. And then Yeah, I think I can see what you mean in terms of Nu on power level. Initially looking at the damage output that Zen can do and what Enigma can do as well. And then Azalea on top of that as well is like your turn cycles are very, very high damage. But the way to disrupt that is to force them to block. These decks don't want to block, right? So what Nu does quite well is it punishes decks that don't want to block, and it really puts them in spots where you're outvaluing them with your on hits. So I think that if Zen's the best deck, I think Nu's the best answer to it. So I really do think Nu's a bit of a metagame deck. And Azalea kind of plays that part as well. It has some on hits and some ways to punish decks that can't block very well or don't play defense reactions as such. So I think it has a really important role to play in the metagame as well. And I think it is going to be a tier 1 deck. I think it is going to be a really important piece of the metagame. So it'll just be interesting to see how the balance ends up shaping out between decks that can actually stop what Azalea is doing or ignore some of their on hits versus decks that get really crippled by them.
Yeah, the how much can you ignore Azalea versus how much do you have to interact with is always an interesting question, I think. I also I agree. I think Azalea can't not be up there because of just the raw power of what it has available to it. Things like Codex, Red in the Ledger, all these cards, right? I just feel like it can't not be up there. There's a few other decks though I want to touch on quickly. Is Victor back on the menu if we're playing a game of blocking and attacking and trying to find our axes somewhere and kind of forcing on putting pure damage on the table?
Yeah, Victor's in a really interesting spot. I think you'd be a fool to count Victor out. Obviously, the Nu matchup is really, really difficult. The fact that they can, one card 8 off their hero ability, just play all your big dumb blue things for free, is really hard. So that matchup is really, really difficult. But at the same time, when there's decks like Zen running around that just like have these crazy output, the Victor's card advantage angle and on hits at the same time does really well against those sort of decks. So I feel like if Azalea and Zen are running rampant and destroying everything in the metagame, then Victor's a really good answer to those decks. I feel like Victor might almost be like the Kano this format. Like if people are too focused on the best deck in the format, if that's Zen or something like that, or the best couple of decks or whatever, and too focused on playing that or trying to beat that, Victor can maybe slide in every few tournaments and be like, well, Nu's a 5% of the metagame or something, so now I can prey on all these Zen and aggro decks that people are playing. So I feel like Victor's going to come in there, and then people are going to be like, okay, well, maybe Nu has to be a deck again because Victor's a deck, and then Victor goes away, and then it comes back, and yeah, it could really be that.
Almost like a metagame. Enigma. How good is Enigma?
Oh, that is a hard question. I don't think anybody could give you a good, solid response on that one weekend, but potentially very good. Enigma, we see it in draft format, right? Like what that hero is capable of doing. You can be, your opponent can be on 20 and you can be on 3, and then you take momentum of the game and you win it by a landslide from there, and they can never touch you again. So I feel like Enigma's a very scary deck. An illusionist has this ability to present things that can be quite hard for people to deal with, and just snowball and take advantage of people stumbling or having an off turn. So I think, it's those. It's going to be on those very, very smart people in our community to figure it out. But I feel like Enigma's got something really there. I'm not enough of a delusionist to believe that I can figure it out. So I'll wait and see what other people come up with. But yeah, I definitely think there's huge potential there.
I'm trying to get out of my Illusionist era, to be honest, but it just keeps seeming to pull me back. I played Dromai at LA when I didn't want to do it. I'm eyeing up Prism or Enigma for Nationals. Like, it's just, I'm trying to get away from it, but it just keeps pulling me back in. I want to play some Mechanologist or some Brute or something, but it's tough. How likely do you think it is that this format this is something I've been thinking about, that this format can come down to almost a rock, paper, scissors of Enigma, Zen, and then a third piece being probably a disruptive deck. Maybe it's new, maybe more likely Azalea, and then decks trying to slot into somewhere in that triangle.
Yeah, I think looking at the format right now, I think heavily likely. I mean, who knows how it's going to develop and what the other decks are going to do, but I feel like that's what they designed. I feel like that's what they were going for. Is a little bit of a rock, paper, scissors where, there's these aggro decks like Zen and KO. There's these mid-range sort of disruption decks like Azalea and Nu. And then there's, kind of the more control-y late game decks like Victor and Enigma. And I feel like they're each built to prey on each other in that kind of triangular fashion. So I think that's what they were designing. I think that's what makes the most sense for them, because then you don't get a format where there's like a clear best deck that just dominates everything. And so, like initial stages, I think very likely that's how the format's going to develop.
Yeah. Good luck trying to find something in between there. I mean, that's what we're all trying to do, right? So I think all eyes on US Nationals.
Yeah, all eyes on US Nationals. No. So this is the perfect spot where Dash just comes in and just says, oh, your disruption decks. Well, I can block you and stop that with this package of defense reacts. Your aggro decks. Well, I'll try to out aggro you, and your go late decks. Well, say hello to Induction Chamber. I can go later. So hey, a little bit of copium, but maybe Dash just comes into the middle there.
Maybe. I mean, I feel like that's clearly always a thought that goes through Matt Rogers' head, but it's also a thought that goes through mine. But then I remember that we're not in Crucible of War anymore, and the damage is much higher, and the on-hit effects are much more disruptive.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
look, it's never quite gotten there yet, and I've been constantly going back to it for the last 3 or 4 years. But you never know; it could come back. Don't count it out. Reiner. It'll get. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, same thing, right? Hey, is Reiner the answer? It's pretty hard to protect auras versus Reiner, and these, decks like Victor and stuff. If they don't have a hand to block with, you can hurt them pretty well. I don't know. Maybe it's a thing.
Maybe as long as you just avoid the Zen bracket, then you might be all right.
Yeah, that deck right seems like it could be a little bit of a problem for anything that can't kind of disrupt it, or
yeah, exactly, or wants to take your hand and you don't care because you don't want to block anyway. So basically,
yeah.
All right. I want to say a massive thanks for coming on the pod. Any last things you want to shout out? Anything you're working on? Anything like that you want to kind of any last words?
Yeah, I mean, you already did a little shout out. Thank you for that. Asking about PCG and allowing me to, kind of reveal something that we're working on and rolling out soon. So pretty excited about that. But yeah, at this stage, I'm just living in the flesh and blood and enjoying card games and whatnot, and looking forward to kind of being involved in a little bit more content. Obviously, Fab with Matt's back out now. So Magnolia have come and sponsored that. So I've got a new co-host. And putting out an episode every month again. So enjoying that. Definitely come and check it out. And then, other than that, Nationals is going to be a fun experience for everybody, I think. And we're going to really see a format develop. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, also likewise, actually really excited for this Nationals. Maybe the most excited I've been for an event close to home, I think, in a long time. Pro Tours always get me sort of jazzed up. But having nationals in this new format and things to explore is great. So yeah, if you want to follow Matt on Twitter, his handle is at MattRogersNZ. You can see that below if you're on the video. Go and give him a follow. And yeah, I mean, any timeline on the Fab Slab 2.0, or is that kind of not at the stage?
The new Fab Slab, probably 1 to 2 months. It's pretty close.
Cool, exciting. So keep an eye out for that. And yeah, massive thank you again. That's it for this week of Arsenal Pass. If you want to follow me or Brendan on Twitter, Brendan APG at Fien_Dale. Big thank you to all the patrons. You can follow our official account on Twitter as well at Arsenal Pass Fab. And until next week, we'll see you next time.
Cheers.